This is the Week 16 NCAA Football Bowl Game Previews, Picks, and Predictions presented by SportsMemo TV. And believe me, folks, I have you more than covered with my co-host Jesse Schule and Rocky Atkinson in the house, subbing for Dr. Chuck, who was unable to make it today, and it's the holidays. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. I'm sure we'll have some input from him later, but for this week, we're going to be talking about the remaining bowl games on the schedule that we haven't already covered. Next week, we're going to set up a roundtable panel with all the faces that you've seen on my show, as many as possible. And we're going to break down the semifinal games and really get at it. It's not going to be, there's going to be conflicting opinions, and we're going to try to sort it out, and it might get pretty lively. So look forward to that next week. But for now, let's get started, gentlemen. I'm going to take a look at the Serve Pro First Responder Bowl. That's between Air Force and Louisville. And this is a matchup that is very intriguing because I like the under. And the Air Force academies show up. Army, which you're going to see later in the show, is also one of the plays. And I always trust, and I think you guys do too, when we're looking at a bowl game that involves Navy, Air Force, or Army. Navy had an off year this year. They didn't make a bowl, but Air Force and Army did. And in this matchup, we have that's set to take place on Tuesday, December 28th. The over-under opened at 55. It's now 55.5. Louisville opened as a 1-point underdog and is now a 1.5-point favorite. Like I said, I'm looking at the under here, guys. Under 15-6 is the Falcons the last 21 games after accumulating less than 170 yards passing in the previous game. That's self-fulfilling prophecy almost because they really don't throw very much. The under is 17-7 in the Falcons' last 24 games overall. They're 12-5 under the last 17 games following a straight-up win. 38-18 with one push. Last 56 non-conference games. And 35-17 in the Falcons' last 52 games following a straight-up win of more than 20 points. So I don't see any reason that to bet the over in this game, obviously. I actually like the first half under as well. But for the show best bet, I am on the under. And lastly, Sutterfield. Coach Sutterfield is 6-0 under as the coach of Louisville off a home loss. Now, granted, he hasn't been there that long yet, but it's still a trend that's in place, and I think it's one that's going to carry over to this matchup in the SerPro First Responder Bowl. So now we are going to move on to Jesse Schule, who's going to be talking about Oklahoma versus Auburn. This is the Lolero Alamo Bowl. I like saying that one. Some of these are pretty tough to say. It's almost like trying to say some of the Russian hockey names, player names, with all due respect. But anyway, Oregon, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, December 29th, 2 days before New Year's celebration. Number 14, Oregon versus 16, Oklahoma Sooners. This game opened at 62 for the total. It's now being bet down to 61. Oklahoma minus 4-point favorite to open, now minus 4.5, with more than 67% of the public on Oklahoma. Tell me, Jesse, am I supposed to fade Oklahoma and take Oregon here since the public is on them?
What do you think? You think I like Oklahoma? Yeah, I'm repping Oklahoma here. Both of these teams are going to have new coaches, but it's going to be a familiar face for the Sooners with Bob Stoops coming in just to fill in for the bowl game. And I don't think they're going to bring him in there to take a loss. Interestingly enough, the Sooners have won 6 of the last 7 head-to-head matchups between these two teams. And that one loss came in 2006 when Stoops was the coach. So it sets up a bit of a revenge spot for him. The Ducks turned to an offensive coordinator, Joe Moorhead. And I think the Ducks are going to be hit a little harder with the opt-out, especially Kayvon Thibodeau, the potential number 1 overall pick, is opting out. They got a wide receiver, Devin Williams. A couple cornerbacks, Michael Wright and DJ James will miss the game. And I just think that Oklahoma is going to be the more motivated of the two teams. The Pac-12 is the redheaded stepchild of the Power Five, and I've spent the past few years defending the Pac-12, but the writing's on the wall. This is a conference that is deteriorating. Of the 2022 recruiting, only Stanford ranks in the top 30 out of the Pac-12. I don't think that the Ducks are going to be as excited about this bowl game as the Sooners, and I think the Sooners, even their backup players, will come ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to take Oklahoma.
I like the breakdown, Jesse. And one of our toughest jobs as professional bettors is determining what teams want to be there, what teams are not, and what teams like Appalachian State, who got such a disappointing loss in their conference championship game, falling flat, and that fell into one of those 15-0 angles we talked about in the last show about championship favorites who lose their conference championship game in straight up fashion and then are installed as a favorite in the bowl game. Well, folks, they're 0-15 after Western Kentucky really gave them a backlashing. I think that's what that game was called. But now we're going to go over to my game here. I'm looking at the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. Yes, I'm staying with the theme of the Armed Forces. Again, I trust them the most. These do not qualify as top-rated bets. This one right here is a 4-unit play that will go to the premium clients. Missouri is a 6.5-point underdog to Army, and don't tell me, I already know the SEC dogs in bowl games, you just blindly bet them, but I think this is a much different situation. Army's coming off a spectacular season, even though they lost to Navy, and in their rivalry game, they still had an awesome 8-4 season. Missouri, they were 6-6 in the SEC. Missouri is 6-6 in the SEC, as I said. They're 3-9, however, against the spread, and that tells me that the market has not adjusted appropriately to correctly evaluate Missouri in any game this year. The last 10, they're 5-5, and overall, again, 3-7 in those 10 games. Those last 10 games, they're 1-4 against the spread on the road. So this is on the road, even though it's, by definition, a neutral game. But check this out, guys. Army is the fourth most efficient offense, requiring just 11.4 yards to put up 1 point on the scoreboard. And I love the yards per point at this time of the season. Missouri is 63rd out of the 130 Division I football teams in the nation at 13.9 yards per point. More importantly, Missouri's defense will not have a prayer against this Army offense. Missouri's defense is weak, sporting a 12.8 defensive yards per point, ranking 107th out of the 130 Division I teams nationally. I think Army is just going to wear them down. It may take the first half to do that, and then they'll open up in the second half. I don't see this being a close game at all. As I mentioned, the academies do show up. Navy, Army, and Air Force are combined 15-2 straight up and against the spread in bowl games when lined as a 3.5-point or lower underdog and are favored. In any game they're favored, up to and including a 3.5-point underdog, they're 15-2 against the spread. That puts this game right into that angle. So it gets even better when they're facing an opponent that's averaging at least 25 or more points per game, and that angle goes up to 7-0 for the combination of Army and Air Force who are in the bowl games this year. So I like betting on Army minus 3.5 over Missouri in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, and then again back to the Air Force game as well. So those are my two best bets for the show. And now, last but not least, the anchor of the NFL SportsMemo TV show, Rocky Atkinson, who's, I have to say it, Rocky, I have to give you a big shout out. 72%, folks, against the spread. Blowing away my record last year of 65.8. Well, not the record, but I was number one at SportsMemo, so this is not even close. And, he was at 68, and you think, boy, if he could only hold that. That was 2 weeks ago. This past week, he went 2-0. He's now 72% on the season, and honestly, you're a fool if you don't go over and get his plays this weekend. I would encourage you to get his plays instead of getting Jesse's and mine. No offense, Jesse. But Jesse Schule's on a 9-1 run in all sports, or was it the NFL?
9-1 all sports for the weekend.
All sports.
That's,
so
Friday,
there you
Saturday,
go.
Sunday.
So now I'll say get their picks this week, and you can get my 365-day subscription on January 1st. How's that? So we're going to take a look at this game that Rocky's going to break down for us, and it's basically the last one before the championship game. It's LSU taking on Kansas State. We saw that Brian Kelly went to LSU, and promptly the starting quarterback and wide receiver stud left the program and entered the portal, and now there seems to be a larger wave of players not happy with the situation. I don't know how this would play out for LSU in this bowl game against K-State. Essentially, neither team really has anything any axe to grind in this one, in my humble opinion. This is the Tax Act Texas Bowl, and 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, January the 4th, 2022. Kansas State opened up as a 2.5-point dog. They now, because of all the news I just mentioned, are a 2.5-point favorite. Feels like the market's going to go to at least 3.5 by game time. The over-under is 46.5, now 47. Take it away, Rocky, and tell us where your best bet is in this matchup.
Thank you, John. Yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of players are moving out of LSU. A few Kansas State players as well. So, looking at this game right now, from what I know, the public is all over Kansas State in this one. As you mentioned, the line opened at LSU minus 2.5. It's now Kansas State minus 2.5. Huge 5-point swing there. And, we gladly like to be on the opposite side of public opinion, and that's no different here. LSU normally goes deep with their roster, so they have some talent waiting in the wings there. And my Rocket Man line for this game is actually LSU to win this game by 6 points outright. This Kansas State offense isn't very good. They're ranked 101st in the nation in total yards. They could also be without quarterback Skylar Thompson. He's listed as questionable here at the moment. He adds 1,844 yards passing, 9 touchdowns. His completion percentage for the season, 68.8%. So we're going to keep an eye on this closer to game time. But if Thompson don't go, it's going to probably be Will Howard at quarterback. His numbers are not that impressive. He's completed 30 of 55 passes this year, only 54.5% on the season. Let's take a look at some trends to consider here. LSU is 7-1 straight up, 6-1 against the spread the last 8 meetings against Big 12 opponents. LSU is 6-1 straight up, 7-0 against the spread the last 3 years when playing with 2 weeks or more rest. LSU is 5-1 against spread last 6 games as an underdog when playing at a neutral site. LSU's 5-1 against spread last 6 bowl games. On the other hand, Kansas State is 3-8 against the spread their last 11 bowl games, and they are 0-5 against spread last 5 games when they play in January. I'm going to lean to LSU here. We're going to take LSU plus the points in this one.
Great breakdown as always, Rocky. Tremendous stuff. And again, people, he's hitting 72%. And at 5 o'clock this afternoon, the Washington Iron Condors are taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in the city of brotherly love. And followed by a second game with the Los Angeles Rams playing at home against those Seattle Seahawks in a very important the NFC West division of the NFL. I lost my train of thought there for a second. But both games have will be critical results for the winner and the loser, especially in the Philadelphia-Washington matchup where both teams are in desperate need to win. They just get to 500 like the Raiders did last night. So great stuff, guys. I appreciate your time. And thanks, everyone, for always watching. Subscribe, like, and comment below, and we'll do our best to get back to those comments. Have a great night in the sports betting markets. Cashing big, folks, and we'll all talk to you soon with another edition right here on SportsMemo TV. And until then, may all the wins be yours.